Welcome back to the U-NATTY States of America. Today is a topic all too close to our hearts because I'm here to tell you that you do not want to date a bodybuilder. Now, all of you guys know that most of the time when I start these podcasts off, it's supposed to be a double entendre, clickbaity type of article title because realistically, as it relates to the industry in general, a lot of people have extremes in terms of what they like to think the topic is, whether they should, whether they shouldn't, enhanced versus natural. Doesn't really matter because ultimately it comes down to the person's individual perspective as to how they see that argument. Well, I don't want to be an individual with a perspective, so I've decided for the U-NATTY States of America podcast all the way moving forward that we have ourselves a permanent co-host. So allow me to introduce with no further delay our new permanent co-host, natural figure competitor as well as NPC nationally qualified competitor and now a pro PNBA figure competitor, Layla Pollack. Layla, say hi to all the lovely people at home.
Hi, people at home or in your car or at the gym, wherever you are.
Now, one of the reasons I asked Layla not just to join me on the podcast, but to join me on this specific episode is we both are obviously in monogamous relationships, but realistically, in terms of our,
Yes,
I assumed the definition. Now, if we talk about our differences in terms of our personalities, Layla likes to consider me much more measured, much more easy off the tongue, a little bit more well-versed in the industry, and I consider her to be what most people want to say before they allow those things to come through their mouth, through their brainstem, and out through social media, because she is a mouthpiece.
Right.
That's right.
Filter.
So my mouthpiece in terms of my counterpart here is going to be much more unfiltered than I am, and give us a different perspective in terms of a female perspective. Give us a different perspective in terms of a figure perspective, a perspective of somebody who has 10 times the Instagram following that I have. That perspective is important, right? We're all going to view the world through very different lenses, which is why we're talking about today, the lens at which our significant others, and if you're the support structure watching this episode, how you view the world of competitive bodybuilding through your competitor. So I've been married to my wife since before I started bodybuilding, and one of the main things that people always bring up when we talk about relationships in bodybuilding is essentially how off the table we are in terms of how regular our interactions with our prospective dates, let alone long-term significant others are. So Layla, I know for a fact that obviously with your boyfriend who currently lives with you, that starting this fitness
currently downstairs, hopefully not
and waiting to hear so desperately what you have to say in terms of how you define your relationship. But in any case, the reason I wanted to ask you about this is because my perspective starts when my wife and I were already on the road to being married. We'd moved in together. We had sort of understood that we were going to stay together. I would love to hear how your first shows went in terms of what your significant other really dealt with and how they kind of came at you in terms of, is this going to be permanent? You know, how difficult is this going to get? Like, tell me a little bit about what he experienced.
So James and I actually got together nearly to the day when I started my first prep ever going into my first set of shows. And what I realized is that didn't give either one of us the chance, because one, we had not been dating prior to that, so we didn't even know each other in an intimate way, let alone you add in your first round of prep where you have no idea what to expect. I didn't get the chance to communicate to him like, hey, this is the thing I do that is completely fucking insane and will take all of my time, mental energy, and effort. And he didn't get the chance to evaluate, like, I don't know, is this something I want to stick around for? We just fucking did it. And we survived. The first prep went pretty well because, you know, the novelty of being in a new relationship and you want to at least put on the front of being supportive to somebody. That went well. The second prep, and I think like you're saying, like, fuck, I thought we were done with this. But by the time I got to the second one, it was like, we're still doing this thing, Layla? Like, you haven't had any time for me already and you're about to do this thing again. There were times he would come home and he's like, I haven't seen you. You're being shitty to me. And it's like, I'm not being shitty to you. I feel fucking shitty. Like, I'm trying to lose, go down to like whatever 6-7% body fat, like I feel miserable, and that projects outward into your relationship. And so if I'm being honest with you, so James and I have been together 3 years, and I think one of the mistakes I made when we have talked about this before is I conflated my success as a bodybuilder, because I went up the ranks very quickly. I conflated that success and the longevity of my relationship, 3 years, with some sort of wisdom that we're making things work. We're not. We just happen to still be together because I think we're both very capable of being uncomfortable together. So what I'm saying is, if anybody is watching this podcast thinking they're going to garner some sage wisdom from me of how to make your relationship work, you're wrong. It's a cry for help if you know how to do it.
Yeah, I think it's thunderstorming pretty bad here. So if the people at home hear some crunching and slamming, that's just the thunder upstairs. But
the thunder of my relationship, that's what's happening. This God's still like adding his own sound effect, like this is how it actually feels.
Wife trying to kick the door open, like, these fucking podcasts again, you fucking kidding me?
That's what I'm saying. Is like, yeah, we're always fucking doing something. Like the way
I'll say it like this, right? And I think that this is something that if you're thinking about even getting into a relationship, or you're the person who's in the relationship that doesn't understand the other person and who actually is the fitness personality, is that a lot of times people see what we do as the start of a serious hobby, and that the top 1% of those people are going to wind up even looking at it and saying, this is arguably something you could do as a full-time job, or that you should really, put everything you have into it. But even though I will concede the fact that some people shouldn't, the vast majority of us who fall into this lifestyle actually prefer where we're like, all right, I'm going to see if I can make this work, because this is something I like. This is something that speaks to me. This is something that makes me a whole person. It's not a hobby. It's very closely related to my identity, and that identity then... And I'll be the first to admit that when you're doing those things, and just like you said, I had a very relatively short rise in the INBA before I went pro and then started winning my Olympia titles too, where we're almost at a disadvantage where we go, well, I was good enough to win their top title this fast, or to be nationally qualified this fast, or to have this much social media following where thousands, if not hundreds of thousands of people are telling me, dude, you're the future, this is so great, your body goals, that we go, it would be a disservice to myself to not try and make this work.
I mean, also arguably to other people, because they say that like artists and athletes, like we do sacrifice ourselves for other people. Like that is what we're doing. We're on a pedestal doing this like professional muse type lifestyle where you do instill some sort of inspiration or see how your life could be kind of motivation for other people. Like we sacrifice ourselves for the eye of other people.
And I would definitely argue in the sense of most people in the comment section are going to try and take it the other way in terms of what you just said, where they're going to say, well, bodybuilding is an individual sport. It's not for other people. You have to understand, everybody who's listening to this, that's not how most people with body dysmorphia, who are the small kid or the shy kid or the person with anxiety, views what we do. What we view is, wow, I've managed to overcome my ability of being anxious or being what I was, shy, small, abused, whatever, and now I'm this other thing where people are on my social media telling me they want to see more, asking me more questions. It then becomes ingrained in you that that is not just what you want to do, what you're supposed to be doing. It may be the only thing you feel you're actually good at. And if you let it go, well, then a lot of that stuff in terms of, let's say, James comes home and says, hey, I feel like you're being shitty to me. No, we're putting so much pressure on ourselves in terms of, if I don't show up the best of me, all of those other people who went, see, I told you shouldn't have tried at this, not only do they win, but we find out the definition of they're right, where we look at ourselves in the mirror and go, man, I not only should have listened, they were right all along. Like, I wasn't built for this. I lied to myself. All these other people must be just making fun of me. It then bleeds out into all of these other things, which, look, that's a bullet point in terms of itself, in terms of if you do or don't want to date a bodybuilder. Nobody starts this and goes, I feel so great about myself. No one. It doesn't happen. Like, that's not a thing. It could be a personality thing. It could be a body dysmorphia thing. There is a level of, I'm starting this, and I've actually said this on multiple podcasts before in terms of why I think the fringe beliefs of a lot of different either political or societal, it all falls on the fitness industry, because arguably the most people who are in the fitness industry are the island of misfit toys, where it's like we all have something wrong with us. We all see the world differently, right? So I'll ask you like a very simple question.
In order to excel at this sport, you do have to be a little bit like, like, and the more of that you have, likely the better you are going to do.
We've always called it controlled suffering, right? And it doesn't take a
Not a
genius to
normal
figure,
life,
right?
you know?
I mean,
Yeah, not at all.
let's really think about it, right? It doesn't take a genius to figure out that pushing yourself into being uncomfortable while all of these hustle culture Instagrams and all these fucking YouTube channels and stuff that are touting like, hey, you know, you got to hustle harder, you got to be uncomfortable. The vast majority of people shy away from confrontation and being uncomfortable.
And then here we are. You guys have no fucking idea. I do everything all the time.
So let's ask you then, from a different perspective than I've ever had, because even though my wife had gone pro, I've been doing this a while. I've meshed with athletes, including yourself. When you started bodybuilding, why is it that you thought this was for you? Like, what was it about that made you go? Because again, like you said, you started when you were already with your significant other, so there was some level of a relationship that kind of made you feel fulfilled, that at least made you feel like you were for somebody. What was it about the fitness industry that made you go, I think I'm going to give this a shot, and then dig into it, even though you knew your significant other was like, again with this shit?
Okay. So this is going to be a little bit of that no filter coming across here. Fucking look at me. Getting into a relationship, not a hard thing for me to do. Not difficult at all. You know, pick of the litter. And again, if I'm being honest, and we've talked about this before, I'm a hyperachiever. I'm pretty much good at anything I try to do. You know, I was a top artist. I graduated with 4.3. I graduated again in college at the top of my class. I was an athlete on varsity as a freshman. Like, I'm good at shit. So when I started bodybuilding is one of the only things I have ever done that is so fucking difficult and so fucking difficult to be really good at. You have to do everything right all the time. And I think that's what stuck for me, is like, a relationship is fulfilling to a certain level, you know? But that's easy come, easy go for me. This sport, it takes everything you have. And that's what I like about it. And I think also, you know, I've said this before, shitty childhood, just really used to suffering anyway. Like, that is a warm place for me. That's something I very much understand. That is the cycle of my life, is just continuously being uncomfortable. You know, add in bodybuilding. It's like, and a lot of my followers have said this about Bane, whom I've never seen. It's from Batman.
Yeah, for those of you who don't know, Layla not only is not good at electronics, but she doesn't watch TV, doesn't watch movies. Most cultural references are just, wow.
I don't know who anybody is. I don't know how to turn the volume on, the TV up. I don't scroll reels. I don't do any of that. I'm like a shark. Like, I have to keep moving or I'll die. And that's actually part of this relationship that's very difficult, is like, sometimes he'll want to like just sit down and watch TV. And I'm like, are you trying to kill me?
This episode of the podcast is brought to you by NutraBio. NutraBio, with no compromise since 1996, they never hide behind proprietary blends and always tout transparent labels. With industry-leading formulations, all with clinical dosages of ingredients and products spanning from bodybuilders to athletes to just general health clients, NutraBio has exactly what you need to take your goals to the next level. Hit up NutraBio.com and use code word NATTY at checkout to save. Yeah. Well, here, let's spin that right back to what we were talking about, in the sense of the relationship with a fitness personality, not even a bodybuilder. Let's stretch it out and say fitness personality. If they come to the relationship as the other piece of their soul is tied to whatever it is they're doing in the fitness industry, right? You, as the relationship, and I'm talking to other bodybuilders too, how you see your significant others is very, very deeply ingrained in this idea that it should enrich the experience, because you know ultimately who you are, even if it changes over time or you start to question those things or whatever it is. when you step on stage and you're that exposed, or you have that much of your life that's exposed on social media, a lot of times you even feel, whether or not it's accurate, that you are very ingrained in who you are. You understand yourself. You've analyzed who you are, what makes you tick, and the other part of your relationship is enriching the experience. The problem is that whether you're the other person or the bodybuilder, you may not see it that way. And so there's a very significant level of stress that falls on the other person that may not understand the level of importance that fitness and bodybuilding or whatever actually means to you. And so we also tend to tie, well, this person knows exactly what this title means to me. So when I win it, they're going to do this when I get off stage. And it's going to be the end of Top Gun where everybody's on the deck and they're yelling and screaming and it just fades to black as we kiss. The amount of times that I have clients that their significant other does not react how they've envisioned it in their head, and then they sit there like, well, maybe they just don't support me. I'm here to tell all the bodybuilders who are listening, they are there, hypothetically, if you see them as enriching your experience. That does not mean it's their job to react the way that you expect them to react whenever these milestones happen. It's the same thing that happens with parents or, friends when you're like, dude, I passed the bar, man. I'm a lawyer. And they're like, dude, good for you, man. Bro, that was like 8 years of my life. That's it? That's all you got?
Yeah. But that's the thing is like, yeah, that is an expectation that we pass or project onto other people, where the truth is they don't understand what you've gone through. They do not recognize how important this is. And I think that a lot of times that's why competitors date other competitors.
Sure.
It is very rare, I think, that competitors will date outside of the industry because, one, it's a miserable lifestyle. It's not normal. Like, can't do fun things together. So, they sync up that way. But also, so many people will come into your life thinking they understand what you're going through with prep. Like, oh, yeah, you eat healthy. You eat like salads. And it's like, bro, it is so far beyond that. It is the most intense process you can put yourself through. And then, having someone stand next to you while you're going through that process, they're never going to understand what it feels like to finally win after you've done this incredibly difficult, like, reducing yourself to the most primitive form of humanity you can. Like, you're just hungry. And you're literally starving. You're literally starving and working very hard.
I would argue on the flip side of that, as a bodybuilder, I've also recently, with my kids and stuff, it changes your perspective a little bit now, where I also see in the sense of, if I take a look at the bodybuilder side of things, where just like we both admit, hey, listen, regular people don't understand what we're going through. They think that this suffering feels a certain way, in terms, knees buckling, need extra sleep, whatever that may be. But on the other side, let's take a look at us not understanding how the general population, if you were to date somebody outside of your population, of bodybuilders or fitness influencers, you also don't understand what putting yourself through that level of controlled pain looks like to them. Because it wasn't until I heard some story about some guy and he said, they told me that my legs wouldn't work, so I decided that in the hotel or the hospital room I was going to do XYZ. And I looked at my wife and I said, if I went to the doctor and they told me, like, okay, you can't work out anymore on your right side, or your legs don't work, I would immediately go, okay, well, what's it take to wind up going pro in the wheelchair division, or to do this or to do that? And I've said it in my powerlifting and strongman podcast, where the first question I asked when I wanted to do a powerlifting meet was, all right, well, I weigh X on meet day. What's the world record for the deadlift? Mm-hmm. That's not a question you should immediately ask. And so other people from the outside looking in, or your significant other that you've been with for a while that doesn't click with the fitness industry and doesn't understand those things, is now looking at us like, dude, if it's so hard and so bad and all you want to do is talk about how hard and bad it is, maybe just don't do it. And I understand, being who I am, that that's not in us, but we also have to admit, as regular people that are not very regular most of the time, that is also an insane level of what we're asking them to understand of us, right? We can't. Why would you be like? That's like someone saying like, "Listen, man, I know these drugs are bad for me, but I just need one little. I got to level off. I wouldn't know how to not work out if they were like, you can't work out anymore. I'd be like, I don't know that can I do marathons? How about marathons? Can we do Ironman? What do we got to do? You know what I mean?
Yeah, you are dating a very different person with a completely different mindset on how life works. Like, I don't like to have fun. I don't like to sit down. I don't like to relax. I don't like to have a drink. Like, you can't ask a normal person to want to be with somebody like that. Like, the DMs I get from athletes, I'll get DMs from UFC fighters that are like, hey, you want to go grab a drink? And it's like, we are completely different athletes, aren't we? Because I can't do that. Like, I've had top 10 like athletes in the world. I wish I could tell you who it is. Reach out to me. Same thing. You want to get dinner? It's like, you're an athlete too. I guess we're just like, we're uncommon even amongst athletes. Like, at the end of the day, and you've said this before about like it's kind of parallel with dating like someone like a lawyer or a doctor. Like, this is a job that we do, right? And I thought about that, and I was like, well, even a lawyer or a doctor gets to come home at the end of the night and like sit on the couch with a glass of wine, or like, hey, okay, I'm running late today, but let's go my watch is on this hand. Hey, I'm running late today, but let's go grab dinner. Like 7:15. Is that work? Like, we can't even do that. You can't even do very simple things.
Let's be honest in the sense of myself, even and you. When I'm on prep, right, and I'm really digging into it, which you're in this area right now of where I was a couple years ago, where I went 5-6 years without ever missing a show. There was no real off season. It was just structured bulks. And I'm in my first real off season now, where I'm like, listen, I have no plans on competing this year. I'm just trying to get heavier, stronger, time under tension. If a workout happens, great. If it doesn't, it doesn't.
And
I wouldn't even
like,
necessarily.
Oh, that's great. He gets a break. No, that part fucking sucks.
Yeah, I'll admit to you.
Also sucks.
There was a part of me when I first tried to do that at the beginning of this year that felt almost like it was failing. Like, dude, I've been doing this for so long that I don't feel like this was what it was supposed to be. But again, I want to be clear that what I'm basically saying is that you're in a situation where I was when I was rising up, right? And so the times that we're in these different phases, we view things very differently. But it's funny because I understand the level of sacrifice, the level of structure, the level of sacrifice in terms of things take for really getting to that top level.
Yeah.
And that I have always said in other podcasts too, you really don't want to do what I'm doing now unless you need the break or you're now irrelevant and you're not in the sport anymore. What structure that takes after a while in terms of me versus other athletes is, right?
Yeah, you're irrelevant. Woo!
I mean,
That's
listen,
the worst things you can say to somebody. Like,
listen, just like you said,
anymore.
You have no filter in general. I'm very open and honest, and that filter comes off when I'm talking very frankly with people, where I'll be able to tell them, look, if you've done the same show 3 years, you did what you were supposed to do, you changed coaches, you took the 2 years off you're supposed to dude, maybe this just isn't for you. You're not relevant enough to get the judges to notice you.
Yeah.
But the irrelevancy also happens as you age out, right?
Yeah.
But it's weird. No one cares if we skip a workout. But they do care that you didn't show up to the dinner, or that you couldn't go to the bar, or that you couldn't do this other thing. And so my message in everybody listening to this that's not in the fitness industry is very simple, right? Just like Layla said, and I've said it on other podcasts, if you want to be the best lawyer, if you want to be the best doctor, if you want to be the best whatever it is that you're doing, it requires a level of sacrifice. The only disconnect is that people consider our level of sacrifice for a niche hobby that they don't understand, that we don't see it as a niche hobby. It's a growing sport that strongman was 10 years ago. And now strongman's growing so fast that, they need stadiums to fit the people into. And I would argue, too, that enhanced bodybuilding has been there for a while. I'm on both sides of the aisle when it comes to being a bodybuilding fan. I don't care if it's natural. I don't care if it's enhanced. But enhanced bodybuilding is at a very different spot than natural bodybuilding is. But, rest in peace to Joe Stetics, who just passed away this weekend. People are looking for a different level of fitness athlete. And there are going to be many relationships throughout the world that are going to have to entertain this new idea of, this is my new level of sacrifice for something that's not a hobby for me anymore.
Yeah.
I want to compete. I want to be a CrossFit Games athlete. I want to be a natural bodybuilder.
Yeah.
But I also want to wrap our heads around, as athletes, that communication piece and your ability to recognize when they're struggling to connect with you is also very important, because we're no more important than them. And I had to learn that in the beginning, where I will say without question, there are 4 days right before and during a show that it cannot be about anyone or anything else other than the athlete, period. Don't expect it to ever fall another way unless it's a life-threatening issue. Your kids are sick, they're going to the hospital, your wife had a car accident. Fuck that. I'm out of here. This contest doesn't mean that much to me.
Sure.
But outside of that, I really advise people to say, listen, if you travel to another country to do that competition and the other person can't come with you to get morning coffee or whatever, the reason you're there is for that competition and for that person. Afterward, rock and roll, get some dinner, get some breakfast, get some whatever. But right then, it's not about you. But in the off seasons, or when it's someone else's, real mental anguish that's getting to them and they need you as a shoulder to cry on, that moment is not about us as athletes. That moment is not about bodybuilding. It's about connecting with the person who's supposed to mean the most to you, and understanding where they're coming from,
Because, you did enter into a relationship. You did enter into this contract. You can't just say, like, oh, yeah, I agree to date you, and not do any of the things it takes to support a relationship. And I've had to tell myself that, like, Layla, you agreed to do this thing. Mm-hmm. You can't afford to just be like, it's all about me, what I'm doing. Like, you gotta make sacrifices, not me. Like, no, you meet in the middle. It's a fucking relationship. It's equal effort. So that is a lesson I've had to learn too. But it is very difficult to feel as if what you're going through isn't more important, because you're physically unhappy. You are literally this is prep speaking, but like, you are literally starving. Like,
sure.
So, when your wife asks you to take over controlling the kids, you can tell I don't have kids, because that's
control. Just put a leash on them. They'll be fine.
Children. You were saying, like, it's not that her suffering is any more or less than mine, and that kind of was curious to me. It's like, how could it not be? Because we're suffering on like a psychological, physical, mental, emotional, like everything hurts. So how could that suffering not be more? But that's something I've had to really look at, is bodybuilding is a very selfish sport. It would be naive of me to think that I'm not being selfish in a lot of other ways.
This episode of the podcast is brought to you by Nirvana Super. Nirvana Super is HMB-infused water formulated by Dr. Naji, who is one of the lead medical research scientists at Vanderbilt University. Originally used to help stop muscle wasting in trauma victims as well as disease-ridden patients, this recovery tool boasts benefits like faster muscle recovery, increased joint health, a rise in physical endurance capabilities during exercising, and can even slow the appearance of aging. It also comes in some seriously good flavors and multiple delivery methods. So if you want to figure out how HMB can help you today, visit feelsuper.com and use Natty at checkout to save. And I've learned, right, that we'll literally take that exact notion and put a pin in it, because realistically, I found out that most relationships wind up suffering for this because we have emotionally attached ourselves to what we do, to the fitness industry, to bodybuilding, to whatever. These people have attached themselves to us. Imagine how bad it would feel if bodybuilding or the gym didn't want you as bad as you wanted it. And yet our significant others had, I will say, I love my wife, and we're equal. We're fine. But in the beginning, right, you're learning how this other person really feels about it. I will say, it takes years to figure out that you really can unzip every bit of you and go, listen, this is really who I am. I know I'm comfortable with it. I know you're comfortable with it. In the beginning, we miss that part that they're like, I'm trying to attach myself to this person, but they're having this strange affair, and this strange affair is with themselves and this vision that they have of themselves. That's what it is. Their suffering comes from the fact that they come home every day to somebody that's like, I love you, but I'm prioritizing my time for this other thing because of whatever reason, because of self.
In the background, that'd be great for me. That'd be like really cool for me if you could just do that. But yeah, that's an insane ask of a person. It's like, it's a fucking relationship. So I think that's where I am right now, is trying to figure out this like unzipping of like, how can I still dominate my trajectory as an athlete without feeling like I'm sacrificing my entire athletic career for a relationship that I'm going to end up resenting. Like, you kept me from the top spot.
My wife was very good about that, where when there were other opportunities that popped up, especially when I won my amateur Olympia title, we were in Europe living there. I had won European championships, or actually I placed fourth in the world, and the European championships was coming up, and I was like, well, that's it. Like, I'm done competing until we go back to the States. And she goes, why? You just did really well, and you know what you need to change, and you just told me it's easy to change. Like, continue to compete. And I'm like, no, I don't want to take that time away from you. She goes, dude, if you do this and you take a break, you will resent the fact that you didn't go. And then I won European championships and won the amateur Olympia, and she was right. But ready,
No,
this
that's
is
a solid thing for your wife to have done for you.
I'm going to rope this all together. Watch this. But now we're taking a step back, and what we're saying is, are these factors that we're talking about, the relationship, communication, how you feel about other people, it's not at all independent or weirdly related to dating a bodybuilder. What Layla and I are talking about, and what everybody should understand, is a communication piece. It has nothing to do with the fitness industry at all.
Yeah.
What we're talking about is being comfortable enough in yourself to admit when you're wrong, being able to admit to a grouping of people who are your kids, your family, your support structure, when it really is about you at that moment in time. I have to be selfish. This is about me. And knowing when in and of yourself to be able to go, this is now no longer about me, it's about someone else. And even though it makes me uncomfortable in a different way to not engage in working out, diet, whatever,
Yeah.
I now need to be uncomfortable enough to be able to see how to make my significant other, my kids, my support structure more comfortable and be there for them. This has nothing to do with the fitness industry.
It has nothing to do with it. When you enter a contract of a relationship, you figure out if it's the same with everything, your job, anything that you sign up to do. You either fix it, make it work, or you leave it because it can't be done for you. That's it. Those are your two options with anything in life.
Just remember, too, that there's a very simple sentence that people say all the time that I really didn't understand until about 4 weeks ago, when I had this person, won't even say their gender because they might listen, where this person wanted to do a show. They were doing great. They really were. And then out of nowhere, they ghosted me for a posing session that was supposed to be in person, rescheduled it, ghosted me again. And then I gave them a new time and was like, I'm going to leave at exactly the time that it is if you don't show up. They didn't show up, and then peak week came around and they just disappeared. Then they messaged me like the day before, no, it was the day before the contest. I'm setting up the stage, and they messaged me, hey, I'm sorry, my anxiety is getting the better of me. I don't know what to do. I called them, talked them off the ledge as a friend and as a coach, and gave them my unabated, unfiltered opinion about what I thought they should do. And out of nowhere, they were like, you know what? You're right. I will regret it if I don't do this show. I'll be there. And I said, I'm going to message you the number of the tanner. Call them as soon as we hang up. Registration is between 5:30 and 7:30. I will wait after registration so that I can pose with you and make sure that you don't feel uncomfortable tomorrow.
That's a good coach.
Never called the tanner, never showed up for registration, and ghosted me again. I missed putting my children to bed because she didn't show. Man, I was so upset where I said,
you should be.
I said,
you went out like, wow, that is next level coach shit.
Here's the sentence. I don't care that you didn't want to do the show. I don't care that you didn't want to do posing. I don't care about any of that stuff. You told me you were going to be somewhere and you didn't, and I missed time with my children because you chose yourself over other people.
Yes.
I can't get back my time.
Yep.
I can't.
Yep.
And so
yes.
I also put that same hat on where I'm like, I really can't get any of that time back. And there are times when if my kids are sleeping or there's nothing going on, sure, workout, a show, whatever. But there's going to be times in our lives where we go, man, James has this thing coming up and I want to be here for him, but it's like the same week as the show. we may have to weigh what's more important, competing
Yes.
or being there for the time that you can never get back again.
Yeah.
You know?
It's compromise and sacrifice. That's a relationship. It's hard fucking work. You do the work or
It
you
ain't
don't.
fitness industry stuff, folks. It's a relationship problem.
Yeah.
So,
at the highest level, because we can't even eat food.
yeah, right. I'm just more mad about it because I can't nosh on the burger at the reception or whatever. So, as we talk about dating bodybuilders, I want to remind everybody that we are rising on Google Play, Spotify, YouTube, so make sure to rate, review, subscribe, and be sure to check out the United States of America weekly with myself and Layla Pollack. So everybody, we hope you enjoyed the podcast. Be sure to let us know in the comments section what you want to hear about next, and in the meantime, we'll see you next time.